Boop. Oh, I can get a railgun. Right. So we want to make a more adult story. We want the frontline movements, and we want the weather system. Well, the weather system and all the weather stuff is fine. Actually, I don't have a problem with any the weather stuff, except with how they're used afterwards, like how they're implemented into the gameplay post takeover. I feel like you could. I just wish you had more control over them, just so you could use them better, because they're the most interesting part in this game. I mean, it just doesn't really fit. Like, I'm coming from two. Like, number one is number one, and no one cares about number one. Let's be frank. Number two is the only one people care about, because it's the first one that was big. Because the first one was basically a proof of concept. The second one was where things actually started.
Yeah.
Three already... mostly in the gameplay, I think, to be fair.
Yeah.
In the actual moment-to-moment gameplay. Let itself go a bit, I think. There was also the story element where it definitely got a bit too involved for my liking. Not as bad as this, mind you, but you know, still. But you know, I can buy that Rico was planning on going back, I guess. Although, mind you, if he had absolutely no agency in going to the agency, then it does seem a bit contrived. Dare I say? The problem is, if you're going for a more serious plotline in such an arcadey style game, you've got to try and mesh those two tones together, and it's not really. I don't feel like it's working. It doesn't feel like it's working to me. I don't care about the melodrama. I just don't. I don't care about the fucking Spider-Man reboot moment, or the fucking Marvel Civil War moment that happens immediately afterwards. Let's face it, doesn't it? In fact, no, it's actually just Marvel Civil War, isn't it? They go to a base that they didn't know was there. It's got some secret shit in it. They find out that, oh my god, his parents were killed. His parents are actually killed because of this. And then he gets mad, and it's all my close associate's fault. It's literally just Marvel Civil War. Yeah, it's literally just the Avengers Civil War. Yeah, although Captain America Civil. There we go. It's been a long time since I cared. I just don't know that you can actually pull off that kind of melodrama in a game series like this, where in number two he was literally just it was basically just a campy action arcade James Bond flick, wasn't it? Basically what it was. And then you go to 3, which tries to be more grounded. And you've got Oven pulling away from the agency as well. I just feel like they tried to go too far with it. It just kind of became a pain to deal with. So I'm here to play the game. Like, so that's the thing. In number 2, I don't remember there being that many cutscenes. There might have been a cutscene like during the story mission, and that was it. Like there was a cutscene occasionally when we did a faction mission. Well, it was usually just a short thing to say, "Oh, I want you to do this," and then it faded in, and you were on your way. Then you were there, and it was usually only on the takeover missions, wasn't it? Everything else, none of it had a cutscene. It was all in game. It was all diegetic. The only stuff that had cutscenes was like the shoot a baby. And it just doesn't feel like any of it works. Because he had 0 issues with anyone or the agency in number 2. The only reason he was pissed off in number 3 was because it specifically had to do with his home, with his home. That was it, where he came from. If it was anywhere else, he would not care at all. Because in 2, he didn't give a shit about the people there at all. That's part of the issue, I think, is because he starts off as such a little sociopath. And then he cares. And it makes sense that he cares about his area. But then he comes to another place. And he cares about this place as well. Just because some woman came up to him and asked him. You can make it be that because he's getting old, like he wants to have a legacy and he's, well, obviously he's got no kids. The only person back home he actually knows is Mario. You could have it if you made it more, because that's the thing as well. In this storyline, for this little set of missions here, like Tom was like, "Oh, I always pegged you for a leader or whatever," which is bullshit. Like, the man who goes around destroying literally everything he sees is not a leader. I'm sorry, no, denied. But you could have him adopt that role slower, like kind of like how they did with Ezio in the Assassin's Creed, the Assassin's Creed trilogy games with him, where he slowly sort of becomes like a more of a leader over the course of the games. Not really in the first game, because the first game kind of skips a bit. But by the end of the third game, you're like, yeah, that makes sense. And then he quits, but you know, ignore that part. If you had the front line section be more interactive, because as it is, it's literally free a region, take over a region. That's it. That's how the frontline system works. That's it. If you had it be more where you were actively going into, like, okay, so if instead of having it like this, where you've got the region, it's just that's static lines. If instead of it having it like this, where only a big mission would come in, you had it so that these bases, like the front line, as close as you could get, is like literally around here. And every bit along this way, there was like smaller stations, outposts, and stuff like that, like maybe villages, and everything close to the front line was taken over by the enemy. And you went into those towns and villages and cleared them out yourself. You can have it so that... Right, okay. Imagine this is the other way around. Imagine this is you and this is the enemy. Right. So imagine, say, is there any way around here where I actually look at it? Right. Let's say you're here. And you've got this base. Now, this, you wouldn't be able to get to that base. That would be like an actual mission. An actual mission objective. But along here, there'd be maybe a checkpoint for the train system, where there's like an actual barricaded thing where there's a gate which will stop trains from coming through if they detect it's not theirs or whatever. And if you went and then took that gate, that outpost, that would move this up like that. So just like a short section like that. And all over the map there was little bits like that. And then, for those ones obviously, for the main bases you'd have a big mission. But then you could have it so that you were moving up. If you took one that was next to the front line, you could move up with your units. And if you took one at the back, that would make it weaker for the enemy, and so you could disrupt things like artillery, stuff like that. So maybe there's on the outside, on the outer lane, there's the front line. So you've got your trenches, you've got your short range weaponry, and they're fighting each other as it does in the game currently. And then like further away, there's a second line, which is like artillery. And if you go there, that weakens it and it makes it easier for them to push through. Like, just have it play out as a literal war. And if you go further back, you can then do smaller missions. Or maybe you can do the missions where you disrupt things like supply lines. Like, there was the one with the train station, wasn't there? If you could do something like that, that reduces the enemy's capacity to wage war or whatever. It takes an enemy, like, vehicle off the stage, maybe. Maybe it reduces the amount of ammo that enemies have got. Maybe it takes away a weapon they've got. Maybe it just straight reduces the amount of damage they do. Stuff like that. So you can feel like you're actively whittling down the enemy. And you can do the war like that. And that would be a lot more involved. And you could have like basically chatter, just random NPC chatter, as you're moving up with your units. Where at the start of the game, maybe Rico and the units don't get along very much together. They're just sort of like shouting random things at each other and they're not really paying attention, not really working together. And then by the time you get further up, make it like a percentage check thing of the map. By the time you get to the end of it, they're like actively working together and calling things for you. Like, specifically calling things for you to check. Or maybe they're moving, maybe you just make the AI for your units better, so they move in and do a better job. And then have it in the storyline as you're moving up, be that some of these training missions like are just mandatory that you have to do, and it makes you feel like you're adopting a more personal role within the army. And then you bring in the stuff about his father, and you make it slow. Like you don't just have this one mission segment, the thunder, the electrical one, where he's just like, "Oh yeah, your dad worked for these guys, didn't he? Oh yeah, your dad was doing this. Oh, by the way, the big bad boss killed your dad." Now have it actually be something that you discover along the way, like audio logs. In the third one, just have audio logs of his dad, like talking about how he got involved in it, what he was doing, how he discovered that the boss was actually some shady person or whatever the fuck. Just have it sprinkled through like that. Just something to linger as you're doing it, not just dump it on you. And I think if they did it that way, it would have been a lot better, frankly. It is ruined somewhat by the massive amounts of firepower that you have in the games already. But they could have reset that. They could have reset that. Because obviously, you've left the agency now completely. You no longer work for the agency. They could have literally just said, no, you don't have any of the tools you've got. You get the things that you stole. So you've got your parachute, and you've got your wrist, your hook blade, or not hook blade, fucking hell. I'm still on Assassin's Creed. You've got your zip line, fucking, you know what I mean. Maybe the wingsuit, take away the guns off it. I think the reason I've got that is part of the DLC anyway, so that might be a bit broken. But yeah, if you did that, and yeah, keep the weather thing, because the weather thing, if you did it that system where it was a small thing, where it was a smaller scale, but yeah, well, it's a proper war, and each individual section was smaller. Then having the weather system, but have it be on like a massive fucking timer, so you can't just spam it. But then you'd be able to absolutely rip through the front lines, and it'd actually make a difference, and it'd be good to use, as opposed to this thing where it's like, oh, I've taken everything. What the fuck am I going to do with this shit? Nothing. I'm going to do fucking nothing with it. That's what we're going to do with it. Because it's just a waste. It's like, it's there. It's an amazing system. You can't use it. Well, you can use it, but why would you? That's what I would do. And I think that would have been a good game. But that's not what we got. So, there you go. Oh well, never mind. And then obviously the money is shite and the fucking. You could even have actually the agency stuff wouldn't get in the way. This thing wouldn't get in the way, although I'd do it differently. I won't do it like that because I hate how this is done. I don't like Jak 5, Jak X. I don't like Jak X. I didn't like it when I first played it. I don't like it in this game. But yeah, the agency stuff would be fine. The only thing I think of is the Demonio stuff. Although, I mean, it's kind of just sort of like stable onto the game anyway, isn't it? Turn up there. Oh, some points on the map have been taken over. It could be a late stage game thing, a late game thing, where, oh, it could be. Well, you could do like a mid, like you do it. You can do it so that it works in two different ways. You take that, and that activates it. Yeah. If it lands in, it's got some set places, or maybe it's got a few set places. Maybe it's got a bunch of set places, but only a few of them get randomly affected, so it's different per gameplay. And what it does is it basically overlays a texture onto existing textures and spawns a bunch of enemies, and in set locate, well, maybe not set locations, but random locations, spawns the things that grab the tank things, and then at those set locations you get the big set piece things, and then from outwards it could also spread like the regular war does. That'd be cool. And then you'd have like a few holdout any fortresses would be remaining. So you'd have like your base fortress where you start the game, which would be like the rebel base, initial rebel base, and then like all the enemy fortresses, and those would never get taken over, but all the rest of the map would be open game and it would slowly spread from where it is. That'd be good. Just, you know, I think if they did it that way, you could have made this work. But they didn't do it that way. There we go. Anyway, that's my 2 cents on the matter. Let's get back to playing the game.